Greetings! Welcome to the Devlog for hot dogs, horseshoes, and hand grenades. We're going to start off as always with a quick sound check. Make sure your speakers aren't up too high. Wonderful. So what have we got for you this week? Well, we have the very first example of the event system, which I've been building for our sandbox play and for a whole bunch of other stuff. Let's dive right into it and the example. So let's take like our thing flinger here, which honestly the most common question I got for this was, this is real fun, but can I have a remote to start this? And instead of actually having to go down here and click start now. The answer is yes, and it also means that you're going to have a remote for a lot of things. So let me pick this actually up. Actually, I'm going to grab my my locker tool. Beautiful. Boink. Locked. So we can pick this up here, rotate it here, and we've got this extra little panel at the bottom. It's only temporarily down here. It'll eventually be integrated into this interface, probably. But basically, these are event receivers, and these have been applied to this object using a single component that I've built called an event module, where I fill out a bunch of parameters, and it sort of hooks these little UIs into methods on the object. So in this case, let's set this to infinite, 10 on the wave size, no delay. I can pick up one of my simple event clickers, which, as we can see here, is set to channel 0. And if I click this, bam, watermelon carnage. Let's move you. There we go. And if I wanted to stop that, because we've got stop set to channel 1, boop, stop. So yeah, these are the first example objects of a sort of unified event system that will exist, that many things in the game will have. For example, the steel popper targets will each have a receiver on them that receives on a channel to reset. So, and they'll also likely have a sender that will also be able to send an event every time they get knocked down. So we have if I want to change the channel, I can just click this and a number pad opens up. So I can be like channel 5 for start now. Pull up my simple event clicker. Starts on 5 now. We also have what's called a filtered receiver, which doesn't just do its thing if it receives an event on a channel, but does it if the value of that event is something specific. So it can be, I don't know, it can be greater than 7, or it can be if it's less than 9, or if it's exactly 1337, or if it's not 5, because 5's a jerk. So yeah. So that is all built into here, and these are sort of universal, but these are sort of static components that are built into the game. They're going to be super consistent, so it will be really easy for me to add receive and send functionality to all sorts of objects in the game. So yeah. So that's a visual demonstration of this. Let's jump out of VR, and I will talk in sort of larger scope about how this event stuff is sort of like is designed to function at the top end and the other toys that I'm working on. Yo! So we've got a ton of stuff to go over, so I'm just going to dive right in because I'm just like super jazzed about this stuff. I want to talk about, just to give you a sort of overview, I want to talk about sort of like the overall goals of this system, a bunch of the sort of categories of like objects and toys that I want to put together for it and that are actually in production. And then I've got a community announcement for you folks. So let's dive in here. So the event system goals, and I know I've described this a bit in the past, and as I said, sort of talked about last devlog, I've tried this a couple times in the past, and I now actually have a solid foundation to work from, which is great. But really, the goal of the sandbox systems at large, but especially of this sort of event system, of making it so that objects can communicate with each other, my sort of usability goals and goals in terms of what you can author, is to sort of support 3 verticals here, sort of 3 archetypes of play. which are, it should support the folks who play H3 as this is a gun sim to them. Like, I come in, I plink steel, I blow up watermelons, I kit together my favorite sorts of guns, and that's primarily, like, I enjoy the weird sausage stuff, but it's not really my thing. It's not my focus. So it should support people who want to just dive into a scene and either load up a sort of a configuration of it that they have made themselves, or that someone else can, that has sort of simple range-centric functionality. And what I mean by that is having a shot clock, having the ability to just like hit a button and reset all their targets, having a button to trigger groups of sort of dynamic targets, having a big board up that shows them all of their shot timings and splits to see how they're doing, and being able to put together even, at the high level, put together like, regulation style shooting courses. And to do that in as few steps as possible, to not have to know how to like code things to be able to do that. It should be as accessible as humanly possible and should involve the fewest numbers of objects and steps to bring all that stuff online. So that is one goal. And that's one of the sort of like system complexity sort of pressures for me, is just making it should be the sort of thing that I should be able to put someone who isn't honestly terribly computer literate in, and they should be able to put together a course like that. And if they can't, then I've done something wrong. The sort of second pillar or vertical with this sort of event system is for people who just want to have sort of like freeform physics-y goofy fun. It's the folks who are like, I'm going to put 600 of this thing and make it explode. Being able to sort of extend that gameplay into like making Rube Goldberg-esque sort of like devices and sequences of things that can, like, I do a thing and then this thing triggers and that causes a SOSIG to spawn, and then a detector goes off and it shoots a knife at the SOSIG, and then the SOSIG falls down a ramp and then that triggers another thing. Like, it should be the sort of thing that is very fluid and easy to like set up and tear down stuff. It shouldn't be super, if you have an idea of I want A to B to C to happen, you should be able to execute that really fast. It shouldn't require like really sort of like precision interaction. Like, I've played tons of Minecraft over the course of my life. I've built some really complex redstone constructions, and I know a lot of folks enjoy the gameplay of the like, I need to make this thing, and part of the challenge is like making it work topologically to make my like laying the circuits out. And then there's a set of people that I am mostly in, which is the like, I enjoy coming up with an idea of how something could work, and I enjoy it when it's done, but the actual process of like squeezing it into a box to make it work is not terribly pleasurable to me. I just want to get to the part where it does the thing that I have the idea for. And so a lot of like the event system being built on channels instead of like manually connected wires and things like that, and having in spatial relationships, is to enable far more freeform connections and to make it like, I want one button to do 18 things significantly faster and easier to do. So, and then the sort of third category and sort of vertical on this is people who want to put together more sort of serious and involved scenarios. Like, I mean, and what I mean by that is like a level of a single player FPS. Essentially, you should be able to construct with this system. Like if we look at a game like Half-Life, that standard design pattern of like, there's a sort of free-form area you can fight in, and there's dudes in it, and then you get to an area and you're sort of locked in, and now you're in sort of an arena, and waves of guys come at you, and then you get rid of them all, and then you go to the next sort of open area. You should be able to sequence all of those things together, set up the necessary sort of conditions and triggers for that, and construct that entirely in game, and it should not feel cumbersome to do so. So yeah, so those are the sort of overall goals. And in terms of specific stuff that I have, the sort of categories of stuff that I have planned for, I mentioned Redstone with Minecraft. There's going to be a sort of set of objects that I would call sort of like event abstract objects. They're the stuff are basically about like managing and modifying events. Repeaters, counters, timers, comparators, logic gates for the people who are into that and need that sort of functionality. They'll basically be little handheld objects about this big with their interface, and I'll probably also add on like a couple, like they'll float in the air by default, but I'll probably also add the equivalent of some like almost like a modular synth rack sort of thing, so you have a convenient place to sort of lay them out and like look at what you have to keep track of it. And importantly, all of the sort of interfaces for this stuff will, when you pick up lock the object with the locker, it'll turn off those interfaces as well. So they're kind of hidden and they're not using up performance, but also like unless the player using a scenario is supposed to engage with those objects, you can just sort of hide that stuff. There'll be sensors and deleters, which are like area/volume checkers. So that's like fire an event when someone brings a rifle into this volume, or just delete all of the SOSIGs in this volume. There's going to be like monitors, which will respond to sort of like global situations, like the player took a hit or a SOSIG on this IFF died. So increment that score timer, score value, etc. All the SOSIG stuff that I've been talking about, which that'll actually be the next Pistool thing that I'm working on, is sort of like a SOSIG path system, which I need for the spawners to function. So all that will plug in. So you'll be like, if you want to hit a button and a SOSIG spawns, or pull a lever and a spawner is now set to repeat spawn up to a population. That's a way that this will connect to it. And then just a whole bunch of wild toys. So like teleporters and bounce plates and physics stuff and remote control cannons. Really, the theme of this whole thing is remote control, is being able to, like H3 already has this really rich system for holding objects and doing stuff with them. And we've sort of explored about the boundaries of a lot of that at this point. So to a large degree, this is about setting up like sequencers and automation and just like more complex constructs, really, with all of this. So yeah, so that is the goals. And like right now, the stuff that I worked on this week was all centered on sort of like the core of the event system, which is now all working. The sort of like UIs that get pulled up. Also, I mentioned, I think I briefly mentioned when we were in game that a whole bunch of this has been architected from the get-go to be as modder friendly as possible. Basically, those little sender and receiver and numpad UIs that I showed you are sort of static and universal in this. So basically anyone, say a modder wanted to be like, I want to make a fart box, and it's just a box that farts sort of thing. They could code that up, and to make that object receive an event to fart, all they would have to do is slap a single Unity component onto it and fill out a bunch of params and provide one transform point for where the UI should go, and everything automatically sets up for them from that. So if you're a modder and you want to hook into this event system, you do not technically have to author any UI yourself. You'll be able to just drop a single Unity component on and say how many receivers you want, how many senders, and hook them into some methods, and it just works. And that has been most of the work this week to make that work. And it's not just for modders, it's for me too. Like it's by making that a universal system, it means I can author a ton of UI exactly once, make sure it works great, and then reuse it just dozens and dozens of places, sort of thing. But the other thing is that it'll make it way easier for the mod community to extend this system. So yeah, so that's it for event stuff for now. As for our community announcement, for those of you who are really into Take and Hold, the first to worst Take and Hold tournament community is going to be beginning this season's big community tournament. It's several months long because it's a double elimination bracket. Basically, all the links for it are down in the description of this video. But basically, it starts next week with a big free-for-all open round. I think they have like a max pod. It's the first like 200 or 250 people that sign up for it. So definitely go sign up if you want to fight in it. And the top 64 scoring people in that open bracket will advance to a double elimination bracket And it's the sort of thing that if you're into watching take and hold runs and want to follow along with the tournament as well, once things, I believe in the open bracket, they're going to be putting the highlights of that, like the highest scoring runs, on their Twitch channel. And then once it proceeds to the double elimination bracket part of the tournament, there will be those will all be on the Twitch channel as well. There's some prizes for the tournament that are fun. So that begins next week. But if you want more info, check out the links. It's all organized via their Discord, so you should definitely pop on over to the First to Worst Discord and check it out. I know I'm excited to see. I was, the first time this happened, honestly, I was sort of like, I barely even realized it at first, and then I was like, wait a minute, there's a take and hold tournament with how many people in it? What's going on? It sort of floored me, because up until that moment, I don't think it had really dawned on me how big the sort of competitive community for that mode had become. So I'm super excited to see another tournament. I'm sure the folks behind it have had a bit of practice in doing this, so hopefully it's a little more sane for them to manage a tournament with this many people in it. But yeah, so I look forward to seeing you all swearing and cursing my name during your runs based upon which weapon you get out of cases, which brings me an infinite amount of joy. So, well, that's it for this week. I hope you all have yourselves a wonderful weekend, and I'll have more cool stuff to show you again next week. Peace.